It's Thursday, March 27th. This is Sam Hooper, the Institute for Justice, and this is my week in legislative law. So, as you can tell from my increasingly haggard appearance, we are getting further and further into the Texas legislative session. So, for a state with over 30 million people, having a session, a part-time legislature that only meets once every other year, obviously you have to cram a lot into that time, and we're really getting into crunch time now. We had nearly 10,000 bills filed across the House and the Senate. There's a long winnowing process. Barely 1,000 of those will ever actually become law, be signed into law by the governor. So for us, for the Institute for Justice, it's important that some of our legislative priorities are still in the mix, that they actually get consideration, that they get committee hearings, that they're fairly discussed and debated, and then hopefully they can be passed in the House and Senate and become law. Today I spent all day in a committee hearing at the House Land and Resource Management Committee, and they were debating three interesting zoning reform and housing bills. One of them is quite technical. It would amend Texas's valid petition rule, and that basically is also known as the tyrant's veto, and it's this kind of anachronistic relic that means that if you want to rezone your own property, upzone it potentially so that you can build more, build something other than a single family house. Maybe you want to build townhomes or a small apartment building, duplexes, different things like that. Then if just 20% of your adjoining neighbors object to that, then they can raise what's called a valid petition that would require a supermajority of the city council to overrule that. We think it's wrong that just a small sliver of your neighbors can then require a majority of a supermajority of the city council to actually intervene on your behalf and let you do what you want with your own property. That's crazy. So there's a good bill that would remedy that and say it would take a majority of your neighbors to raise that valid petition, and then just a bare majority of the city council representing everyone in the city to overrule that. It just balances things in favor of democracy, in favor of new housing, and in favor of property rights. Another very good bill focused on occupancy restrictions. So you might remember I testified a couple of weeks ago in the Texas local government committee about getting rid of some of these occupancy limits that say you can't have more than 2, 3, 4 unrelated people living in the same house. No good reason for these bills, really. They're sometimes used to target students, but they could target all kinds of different people that might like co-living situations, whether they're young professionals starting out, recently arrived immigrants, people at the bottom of the housing ladder. There's all kinds of people that can avail themselves of this, but are often prevented from doing so. And cities can enforce this very rigorously, and they'll go as far as taking pictures of you outside your home and trying to figure out, how many unrelated people are living here, and they'll count the cars in the driveway and do all these kind of dystopian surveillance things to enforce their ordinances. We at IJ believe those ordinances are an infringement on property rights, so this bill would get rid of those occupancy limits, which is great. And then there was a Yigby bill as well, a Yes in God's Backyard bill, as we've seen in a few different states now, that will make it easier for churches and religious organizations to build mixed use or multifamily housing on land that they own without having to apply for a rezoning. So this is great. This would help them fulfill their own missions. A lot of these religious organizations see it as part of their duty to help house the poor, to provide low-income housing, to provide just different accommodation for the community and for their neighbors. At the moment, if they're in single-family zoned areas, as a lot of churches are, that's all they can provide, and that's not very helpful. You can only have a certain very low density with that. This would let them do more with their land, so that's quite a good bill as well. That took up pretty much all of my day. I had a few meetings with different representatives and senators' offices as well. It's getting to that time of year where we really need to make sure that some of our institutional priorities, our bills, are getting committee hearings. Not everything gets a committee hearing. A lot of bills die, having just been filed. They never even see the light of day. They don't even get discussed in a committee. It's important we think that they are discussed. And there's different ways and procedures for doing that in the House and the Senate here in the Texas legislature. Often it helps just if a member can go up to the chair of that committee, maybe on the House or Senate floor, and make a personal request and say, hey, I've got this bill, I think it's really good, will you be so good as to schedule it in your committee for a hearing? And often just having that member-to-member ask can be really good. So today I spent some time just inquiring with some offices who are sponsoring bills that we like, whether they've made those member-to-member asks, whether there's anything that I can do in terms of meeting with different legislators, different groups, maybe some different activists, to just try and apply some pressure, some friendly pressure to those committee chairs to actually get those bills scheduled for a hearing. And obviously once that's done, then hopefully we can bring some bodies to the committee room, whether it's for housing, whether it's for our economic liberty stuff, our food truck freedom bill, our cottage food bill, all those exciting pro-liberty, pro-economic freedom bills. We can actually get these bills the hearing that they deserve in public. So it's been busy. I'm quite worn out. It's been a long week. There's still a day to go. There's a lot more going on. But yeah, I've been very focused on Texas this week. I probably will be next week as well. But there's a lot of other stuff going on in other states, but I'll save that for another video. Anyway, this is Sam Hooper of the Institute for Justice, and that's my week in legislative law.